The night was quiet over Earth's northern deserts, the kind of silence that only came before something extraordinary. Far above the planet, hidden behind layers of dark clouds, an alien fleet hovered silent, invisible, and watching. Their ships were smooth and silver, shaped like blades that sliced through the darkness. Inside the largest one stood General Kareth, a tall alien with deep blue skin and calm, watchful eyes. He was known across the stars as a wise and disciplined leader of the Zyran Dominion, a powerful civilization that explored galaxies in search of knowledge. Their mission on Earth was meant to be simple: study the human species, collect information about their biology and emotions, and leave without being noticed. The Zyrans had heard countless stories about humans, some saying they were brave and curious, others warning they were unpredictable and fierce. Kareth didn't believe all of it, but he respected the humans' reputation. He had read reports of how they had survived wars, disasters, and challenges that would have broken most other species. Still, his orders were clear: observe quietly, never interfere. But among his crew was a young officer named Varric, full of pride and impatience. Varric thought humans were primitive and weak. To him, they were nothing but subjects to be studied like insects. When his scanning device picked up small human life signs near a rural village, a group of children playing in a field, Varric saw an opportunity to impress his superiors. General Kareth wants data, he muttered to himself. I'll bring him something better: live samples. Without asking permission, he took a smaller craft and descended toward Earth. The village below was peaceful. A few old houses stood near a line of trees, and laughter echoed as the children chased fireflies under the moonlight. They didn't notice the faint hum in the sky above them. The ship's lights were invisible, its movements silent. Within moments, a soft beam surrounded the field, and the children vanished in a flash of blue light without a sound, without a trace. Hours later, back on the mothership, Varric stood proudly before General Kareth. General, I have brought something remarkable, he said, pointing toward the containment room. Inside were 6 human children, frightened and confused, sitting together on the cold metallic floor. They whispered to each other, holding hands. Kareth's expression darkened. You did what? His voice, usually calm, trembled slightly. They're unharmed? Varric replied quickly. I thought this would help our research. We can study their minds, their language. You broke the first rule, Kareth interrupted sharply. No direct contact with humans. But Varric didn't seem to understand the seriousness of what he had done. General, they're just children. They won't even remember. What's the harm? Kareth turned away, pacing across the control deck. He looked out through the glass wall at the planet below. To him, Earth no longer looked peaceful. It looked like a sleeping giant that had just been kicked awake. He knew humans were protective, emotional beings. They could forgive many things, but not harm or even the idea of harm to their young. Do you have any idea what you've done? Kareth whispered. Varric frowned, confused. I brought valuable data, sir. Kareth turned back to him, his eyes cold. You didn't bring data. You brought death, maybe not to us now, but soon. If humans discover their children are missing, they won't stop searching. They'll track us. And when they find us, they will not hesitate. Meanwhile, in a small town on Earth, panic had already begun. Parents screamed their children's names as searchlights swept through the fields. Police cars arrived, their sirens cutting through the night. Everyone was shouting, praying, running in circles, hoping it was all just a bad dream. The disappearance made headlines within hours. The story spread across the world: 6 children, gone without explanation. Satellites detected strange energy readings near the upper atmosphere, but no one could understand what it meant. Back on the alien ship, the children sat quietly now, scared but unharmed. A soft voice spoke to them through a translation device, trying to calm them. No one will hurt you, it said in broken English. But the children didn't trust the voice. They wanted their families. General Kareth watched them through the glass. One of the smallest, a girl with messy hair, was crying softly. The others tried to comfort her, whispering that everything would be okay. Seeing that broke something inside Kareth, he turned to Varric again, anger replaced by something deeper: fear. You don't understand humanity, Kareth said slowly. You think they're fragile because they look small, but that's their strength. They love fiercely, they protect each other, and when something threatens their children, they will fight with everything they have. Varric still didn't speak. He finally began to realize this wasn't an achievement, it was a disaster. Kareth immediately contacted the communications deck. Prepare to return the children, he ordered. Quietly. No harm must come to them. No one must know we were here. But before the crew could act, a sensor alarm went off. A holographic screen showed several human satellites had begun to lock onto their position. Their stealth systems were weakening. Kareth's heart sank. They've found us, he murmured. Down on Earth. Powerful telescopes were catching glimpses of something unnatural above the clouds. Military radars were picking up faint signals, moving too fast to be aircraft. Scientists began connecting the dots, and governments quietly raised their alert levels. For Kareth, it was too late to hide. He knew what was coming. The humans would come looking, and they would not stop until they found their children. He stared once more at the frightened young faces behind the glass, and made a silent promise. I will get you home. And in that moment, for the first time in his long military career, The great alien general felt something he had never felt before, not because of danger to his ship or to himself, but because he had seen a glimpse of something truly powerful, the bond between humans and their children. He turned to his crew. "We fix this," he said softly. "Before it's too late." The command ship began to move, descending closer to Earth, carrying both guilt and urgency through the cold sky. The mission that started as a quiet observation was now turning into a race against Tima, the desperate attempt to right a terrible mistake before humanity's wrath arrived. The morning after the children disappeared, the entire town was in chaos. Parents, police officers, and volunteers searched the fields and forests. Flashlights moved through the tall grass, and dogs barked as rescue teams shouted the children's names again and again. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds, as if nature itself felt the fear spreading through the air. Reporters gathered near the fences, holding microphones and cameras, asking questions no one could answer. Some said it was a kidnapping. Others whispered about strange lights in the sky the night before. The truth was, no one had seen or heard anything. One moment, the children were laughing, and the next, they were gone. Among the missing was Lila, a 7-year-old girl with big brown eyes. Her father, an Air Force officer, stood near the field, his face pale and silent. He had faced dangerous missions before, but this was different. This time, the enemy was invisible. When he looked at the sky, he didn't see stars anymore. He saw mystery, maybe even threat. He made one silent promise to himself. Whoever took them will return them more. Face the world's full strength. By noon, the news had spread across the country. Government agencies became involved, and satellite data was reviewed carefully. Scientists noticed something strange. Unusual bursts of energy had appeared in the same area where the children vanished. The pattern didn't match any known aircraft or natural phenomenon. It was as if something had appeared from nowhere and disappeared again in seconds. Meanwhile, above Earth, in the silent halls of the alien mothership, General Kareth stood before the containment room where the children were kept. His expression was tight and serious. The children were safe, sitting together under soft lights. The alien medics had given them warm blankets and water. They had also tried to communicate using gentle gestures and simple words, but the children didn't understand the aliens' language, and the aliens didn't understand human tears. Kareth could feel their emotions even without words, their fear, their confusion, their longing for home. And every second that passed made his guilt heavier. "General," said his second-in-command softly, "the humans are reacting. Their satellites have changed course. Their ground units are active. They are searching." Kareth closed his eyes. "Of course, they are. They always protect their young first." He turned toward the view screen, where Earth's blue surface shone like a marble beneath them. He remembered ancient report stories from other species who had encountered humans in distant wars. The humans had fewer weapons, smaller fleets, but they fought with a kind of courage no logic could explain. They didn't fight for power or conquest. They fought for each other now. They were about to face that same fury again. Kareth ordered his communication team to begin decoding human signals. He wanted to know exactly how much the humans understood. Within hours, his translators picked up emergency broadcasts, military orders, and news reports. Each one painted the same story. 6 children missing, possibly abducted, unknown cause. Government investigating possible foreign or non-human involvement. Non-human, Kareth whispered. The word struck him deeply. He had spent his life studying and understanding other species. But now, to the humans, he was the monster in the dark. Down in the containment area, Lila was whispering to the others. "Maybe they're not bad," she said quietly. "Maybe they just don't know we're scared." Her bravery surprised even the aliens who watched from behind the glass. One medic slowly approached and held out something that looked like a small glowing toy, trying to make her smile. She didn't take it, but she stopped crying. For Kareth, that small moment felt like a fragile bridge between two worlds. Then a loud alarm echoed through the control room. "General, Earth's defense radar has locked on our ship. Their jets are taking flight." Kareth's calm disappeared. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders. He had to choose, run, hide, or stay. If they ran, it would look like guilt. If they stayed, humans might attack. Either way, there would be no peace. He clenched his fists. "Prepare for atmospheric descent," he ordered. "We will return the children." "But General," one officer protested, "if we enter their airspace, they may fire at us." Kareth looked at him with steady eyes. "If we don't return them, they will destroy us anyway. We started this mistake, we must end it." The ship's engines shifted to silent mode as it began descending slowly through the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere. Clouds swirled around the hull, lightning flashed in the distance, lighting up the alien metal like a silver ghost in the storm. Below, human radar screens filled with confusion. The object was descending slowly, deliberately not attacking, but approaching. Fighter jets were deployed to intercept. Commanders on the ground gave strict orders: hold fire unless provoked. Back in the ship, Kareth looked at the children one last time. "Soon, you'll go home," he whispered in his own language, hoping somehow they would understand. He didn't know if humans could ever forgive what had happened. But he knew one thing: he couldn't let fear decide his actions now. As the ship lowered through the clouds, The children pressed their hands against the glass, watching the blue and green of their world come closer. Lila's eyes widened with hope. "We're going home," she whispered to the others. At the same time, down on Earth, the Air Force officer, the same man who had lost his daughter, stood near the command center, watching a radar screen. His heart raced as he saw a new signal blinking closer and closer. He didn't know if he was about to face an enemy or a miracle. In that moment, two very different hearts, one human, one alien, beat with the same fear, the same hope, and the same question: can understanding come before war? The sky above began to rumble as something massive broke through the clouds. People on the ground stopped and looked up, their mouths open in awe and terror. The silver shape of the alien craft appeared, glowing faintly from the friction of entry. The entire world watched. Cameras rolled. Soldiers raised their weapons. And inside that ship, General Kareth stood tall, ready to face whatever came next, not as a conqueror, but as someone who finally understood the price of one reckless mistake. The next few moments would decide everything: the future of his people, the safety of the children, and the fragile peace between two worlds. And as the alien ship hovered silently over the same field where the children had disappeared, the whole planet seemed to hold its breath. The alien ship hovered silently above the Earth, a massive silver shadow floating between storm clouds. Lightning flickered around it, painting its smooth surface in flashes of white light. Down below, soldiers and scientists watched from their base, eyes wide, hands trembling over controls. Every radio in the room buzzed with urgent voices. Object confirmed and human craft holding position, awaiting orders. Inside the ship, General Kareth stood before a wide glass panel, his reflection faint against the blue curve of Earth. He had seen countless worlds, led armies through countless battles, but never had he felt fear like this. Not fear of death, but of being misunderstood. The fate of his crew, and maybe his entire species, now depended on what happened in the next few hours. He turned toward the containment room, where the 6 human children sat quietly. They were no longer crying. The alien medics had given them warm food and soft blankets. The room's light was dim. Some of the children even dozed off, exhausted from fear and confusion. Only one, little Lila, remained awake, watching through the glass window, as if she knew something important was about to happen. Kareth entered the room slowly. The children stiffened but didn't run. His towering figure looked frightening at first glance, but his gentle eyes told another story. He knelt down, lowering himself so they could see his face clearly. His translator device buzzed softly before speaking in careful English. "You are safe," the voice said, matching his calm tone. "We are taking you home." The children exchanged nervous glances. They didn't understand everything, but they understood home. Lila stood up hesitantly, clutching her small blanket. You know my home?" she asked in a shaky voice. Kareth looked at her, sensing her hope. He gave a slow nod. "Yes, soon." For a brief second, there was peace in that small room. The bridge between two worlds had begun, not through power, but through kindness. But outside that room, things were getting more complicated. The human military had locked onto the alien craft's position. Fighter jets surrounded the area, keeping a cautious distance. World leaders held urgent meetings through video calls. No one wanted to start a war, but no one wanted to show weakness either. The energy readings from the ship were powerful, too powerful to risk misunderstanding. In one control room, a general asked sharply, "Why are they here? What do they want?" No one had an answer, but as the alien craft remained still, instead of attacking, a new theory spread through the ranks. Maybe they weren't enemies after all. Maybe they were returning something or someone. Up in the ship, Kareth gathered his officers. "We have no time," he said. "Prepare to send the children back. I will deliver them myself." His crew looked uneasy. "General, the humans are armed. If you go outside, they might see it as a threat." Kareth's voice was steady. "Then they must see truth in my actions." He walked back toward the control deck and stared at the blue planet below. He remembered everything he had studied about humans: their strength, their flaws, their unpredictable hearts. He had read about their history of war and peace, of destruction and compassion, but there was one detail that always stood out to him. Humans changed when it came to protecting their children. That was when they stopped being fragile. Kareth now understood that deeply, and he also knew that one wrong move could make this situation explode into chaos. He turned to his communication officer. "Send a signal," he ordered. "Use their radio frequencies. Tell them we are returning what was taken. Tell them no harm was done." The officer began transmitting. It was a simple message, repeated in several human languages. "We are not enemies. We are returning your young. No harm. No war. On Earth." The message reached the command centers. At first, no one believed it. "Is this a trick?" one commander asked. But then satellite images showed the alien craft opening a small landing vessel, one shaped like a gentle silver teardrop, descent slowly toward the same field where the children had vanished 2 nights earlier. The jets were ordered not to fire. Tanks surrounded the field at a distance, soldiers watching through binoculars. The entire world seemed to hold its breath. The small craft touched down softly, its surface glowing faintly with energy. A ramp lowered, releasing a wave of cool, blue light. And then, slowly, General Kareth stepped out. He wasn't wearing armor. He wasn't holding a weapon. His tall form looked calm, almost humble. In his arms, he carried Leela, who clung to his shoulder, not in fear but in trust. Behind him, 5 other children followed, guided gently by smaller alien officers. The soldiers on the ground were frozen in disbelief. No one moved. No one fired. Kareth took a few careful steps forward and stopped when he saw the line of human soldiers ahead. He placed Leela down gently and took a step back, raising both hands to show peace. The translator device on his chest spoke his words clearly through the air. "We are sorry," it said. "There was a mistake. They were never meant to be taken. No harm, only fear. Forgive this." A long silence followed. Then, one of the soldiers, Leela's father, broke through the line. Running toward her, he fell to his knees, scooping her into his arms. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered her name again and again. The sight made the other soldiers lower their weapons. Lila looked back at Kareth and gave a small wave. "Thank you," she said softly. The translator repeated her words in the alien tongue. The meaning was simple, but it filled Kareth's heart with warmth. He didn't understand. Then slowly Kareth stepped back toward his ship. He knew it was time to leave. The longer they stayed, the greater the risk. He turned one last time toward the humans watching him. His translator spoke his final words to them. "Protect them. Always. That is your greatest strength." The ramp lifted, and the craft rose back into the sky, joining the main ship above the clouds. The humans below watched silently until it disappeared from sight. Back aboard the mothership, Kareth stood by the viewing window once again. The blue planet below looked peaceful now, almost forgiving. His crew waited for his next command, but he didn't speak for a long while. He was lost in thought. He had studied humans for years, but in a single day, he had learned more than all his reports had ever told him. He had learned that humans didn't fear the unknown because they were weak, they feared it because they cared. And that care made them powerful beyond logic. Finally, he turned to his officers and said quietly, "We will never come here again without understanding. Remember this day. Record it. Let it teach us what strength truly means." As the ship drifted higher into the stars, the message was clear in every Zyran heart. Earth was not a planet to conquer, it was a planet to respect. Rain began to fall softly over the wide, open field as the alien ship slowly disappeared behind the clouds. The soldiers stood still, staring at the sky long after the last light vanished. It felt as if the world had just witnessed something that would be remembered for centuries, an encounter, not of war, but of understanding. Leela's father held her tightly, unable to believe she was really there in his arms again. Around him, the other parents cried and laughed at the same time, hugging their children, whispering prayers of thanks. News reporters shouted questions from a distance, but no one paid attention to them. Everyone's focus was on the 6 small children who had somehow come back unharmed from the stars. The government immediately took the families to a nearby base for safety and medical checks. Scientists and doctors rushed to examine the children, but they soon realized something strange. There were no signs of harm, not even a scratch. The children seemed physically fine, though they spoke of things no one could quite understand. "They were kind," one boy said. "They didn't hurt us. They were sad." At the same time, across the world, people gathered around televisions and phones, watching live news. The footage of the glowing ship landing and the alien general stepping out had already gone viral. Some people were afraid, others were amazed, but most were simply silent, trying to understand what they had seen. For the first time in human history, an alien had come to Earth not as an invader, but as someone who apologized. Meanwhile, far above Earth, General Kareth sat alone in his private chamber aboard the Zyran command ship. The blue light from the planet shone through the window, washing over his thoughtful face. His hands were clasped together, and his expression was calm but heavy. Around him, his officers worked quietly, avoiding unnecessary noise. Everyone on the ship knew their general had done something no Zyran leader had ever done before. He had faced a human military without weapons, risking his life to return their young. A loyal officer named Seren entered the chamber carefully. "General," she said softly, "our scouts report that the humans have not pursued us. Their forces are returning to their bases." Kareth nodded slowly. "They will not chase us. They have what matters most to them." Seren hesitated, then spoke again. "You could have been destroyed, sir. You stepped into danger with no protection." Kareth looked at her with tired eyes. "I would rather face danger than let fear rule our choices." He paused, his voice lowering. "We made a mistake. I made a mistake. Those children should never have been touched." Seren said nothing. She had seen fear in many forms. Fear of death, fear of defeat, but the fear that Kareth had shown when the human children were taken was different. It was the fear of awakening something unstoppable. "Do you really believe the humans would have attacked us?" she asked after a moment. Kareth turned toward the window again. "If we had harmed even one child," he said quietly, "they would have united their nations, their armies. Even their enemies would have stood together. Humans may fight among themselves, but when their young are threatened, they become one force. That is why they have survived everything thrown at them." He stood and walked slowly to the observation deck. Below them, Earth spun peacefully, its clouds glowing softly under the sunlight. They are powerful, he continued, not because of weapons or strength, but because of love. That is something we, as a species, have forgotten. Back on Earth, Lila sat with her family inside the base. She held a cup of warm milk, her small hands trembling slightly. Her father knelt beside her. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "can you tell me what happened? Where did they take you?" Lila looked up, her eyes wide and thoughtful. "They took us to the sky," she said softly. "Everything was shiny and quiet. They looked different but not mean. They didn't talk like us, but they tried to make us calm. One of them told me we would go home soon." Her father listened carefully. The more she spoke, the more he realized the aliens hadn't acted like enemies. They hadn't hurt or frightened the children intentionally. It was confusion, curiosity gone too far. But when he remembered the sight of that tall alien stepping out of the ship, holding his daughter carefully, something inside him changed. The anger that had burned in his heart began to cool. Later that night, when the world quieted down, he stood outside the base, looking at the stars. Somewhere up there, that alien general was watching too, he thought. Two very different beings, separated by light years, but connected by one simple truth: the desire to protect what mattered most. In orbit, Kareth received new orders from the Dominion Council. They demanded an explanation for his actions. He was to report immediately and justify why he had broken protocol by revealing himself to the humans. Saren watched as he prepared the transmission. "They might remove you from command," she warned. Kareth smiled faintly. "If they do, then let it be. I would rather lose my rank than my conscience." When the council's image appeared on the screen, a group of stern Zyran leaders stared at him. "General Kareth," one of them began, "you violated first contact regulations. You risked exposure and conflict. Explain yourself." Kareth bowed his head slightly. "An officer under my command captured human children without permission," he said. "When I discovered the act, I took full responsibility and ensured their safe return. Had I not, Earth's retaliation would have cost countless lives. This was not weakness, it was wisdom." The council members murmured among themselves. "You claim humans would have attacked?" another asked. "Yes," Kareth said firmly, "but not out of hatred, out of love. Their instinct to protect their young is stronger than any weapon we possess. We must not provoke them. We must learn from them." The council fell silent. One of the elders finally nodded. "Perhaps you are right, General. The humans are not to be underestimated." The transmission ended, and Kareth leaned back, exhausted but relieved. For the first time since the incident began, he felt peace in his heart. He looked out the window one last time before ordering his fleet to leave Earth's orbit. The planet grew smaller, but the memory remained large in his mind. The crying children, the human father's tears, and the little girl's brave smile. Before turning away, Kareth whispered softly to himself, "May your kind never lose that love. It is what makes you strong." As the Zyran fleet vanished into the darkness of space, the Earth continued to spin below, unaware that it had just changed the heart of a leader from another world. And somewhere, in a quiet house under the stars, a little girl looked up at the night sky and smiled, wondering if the tall blue alien who had carried her home was still watching. The stars looked peaceful from a distance. The Earth floated quietly among them, blue and alive, unaware that a fleet of alien ships had just vanished beyond the edge of its sky. The storm that had once filled the air with tension was gone. In its place came silence, a silence, filled with relief, wonder, and questions no one could yet answer. On Earth, the world was still trying to understand what had happened. The governments released only a small part of the truth. Official reports said that an unidentified object had returned the missing children safely. But the families who had been there, who had seen the silver ship and the tall alien who stepped out unarmed, knew more than what the world was being told. They had looked into the eyes of something not human yet not cruel. Little Leela became the quiet center of this story. Her face appeared on every news screen, but she spoke little. When people asked her what the alien general was like, she would simply say, "He was sad. He wanted to fix the mistake." Those simple words spread around the world and softened many hearts. People began to see the event not as an invasion, but as a misunderstanding that could have turned into war and didn. Single quotes T. Meanwhile, far away in the dark ocean of stars, General Kareth sat in his ship's command room, staring into space. The lights of his fleet glowed softly behind him. They were traveling back toward the Zyran Dominion, but Kareth's thoughts remained behind. On Earth, his mind replayed every moment: the frightened faces of the children, the fury in the eyes of their soldiers, and the wave of calm when he placed the little girl safely in her father's arms. He had led thousands of missions in his life, but none had changed him like this one. It wasn't the danger that stayed with him, it was the feeling. The feeling of understanding something he had missed all his life. He had always believed that strength meant control, order, and logic, but humans had shown him that true strength was something else entirely. It was the courage to care. His officer Saren entered quietly. "General, we've received a message from the council," she said. Kareth turned his head slightly. "And they've decided not to punish you. In fact, they've ordered that all future missions involving Earth be cancelled indefinitely. No more studies, no more interference." Kareth's shoulders relaxed. "Good," he said softly. "Let them grow without our shadow." Saren hesitated. They also asked for your report. What will you tell them, General? What will you say about the humans? Kareth stood and walked toward the viewing window. He looked at the endless field of stars, his face calm and thoughtful. I will tell them the truth, he said, that humans are dangerous not because they love war, but because they love peace so fiercely, that they may be young as a species, but they are guided by something ancient, the instinct to protect life, especially their children, and that makes them powerful beyond understanding. Saren nodded quietly. She could see the respect in his eyes, the kind of respect one warrior feels for another. Will we ever return there? She asked. Kareth smiled faintly. Maybe one day, when they are ready or when we are. For several days, the ship drifted in silence as they traveled home. The crew began recording their data, but the files that mattered most were Kareth's personal notes. He wrote them not as reports, but as lessons for future generations of Zion. His words were simple yet deep. Never take what is not yours to understand. Never harm what others hold dear. And never mistake kindness for weakness, especially from humans. He ended the log with a final line that would later become famous among his people. Fear the species that fights not for conquest, but for love. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The children went home, the news faded, and the world moved on. But some things changed quietly. The scientists who had studied the event began working together across countries, sharing information more freely. Governments agreed, in secret, that if contact ever happened again, they would choose communication over aggression. And for Leela and her family, the experience never truly ended. Some nights, she would sit by her window and look up at the stars, searching for that faint silver light she had seen once before. Her father would join her, smiling gently. Do you think they're still watching us? She would ask. He would nod. Maybe they're making sure we're safe now. One night, months later, as Leela lay in bed, she saw something unusual through her window, a brief streak of blue light crossing the sky. It wasn't like a normal shooting star. It moved slowly, almost deliberately, then vanished into the clouds. She sat up and smiled, whispering to herself, Good night, General. Far away in his command room, Kareth stood beside the window of his ship, staring at the same stars. Though he could never return, he often directed his ship's route near Earth's system, just for a moment, to look from afar. He didn't know why, it simply felt right. Saren joined him once again. Still thinking about the humans? She asked kindly. Always, Kareth replied. They remind me of something we lost long ago. What is that? Heart, he said simply. We grew wise, but cold. They are still warm, even in their chaos. That warmth will carry them far, maybe farther than any of us have ever gone. He smiled faintly, watching the blue planet shrink to a small dot in the distance. Perhaps one day, when they reach the stars, we'll meet again, not as strangers, but as friends. The ship turned slowly, disappearing into the dark, leaving behind only the silent whisper of engines. The stars swallowed the light, and Earth continued its quiet rotation, glowing softly under the sun. Years later, among the archives of the Zyran Dominion, one document stood apart from all others. It was titled The Human Encounter. It contained General Kareth's words, his memories, and his warnings. Young Zyran officers studied it in their academies, reading about the day their proud fleet had learned humility from a small group of Earth children. And when they read the final line, many paused in silence, thinking deeply, respect the humans, for their hearts burn brighter than their suns. Back on Earth, those same children grew up with stories no one believed. Yet sometimes, when they looked to the sky, they felt something familiar, like a distant friend watching over them, silently promising that some mistakes can lead to understanding, and some encounters can change the course of entire worlds. And so, both the humans and the Zyrans carried the memory of that day not as a story of fear, but as a lesson of peace, born from one mistake, one apology, and one act of trust. The alien general had panicked once, fearing humanity's wrath, but in the end, he discovered something even stronger than fear: respect, and that respect, carried across the stars, became the start of something greater than either species could imagine.